So I want to begin just with two quotes from Scripture that are almost the same quote. And Mary kept all these things, reflecting on them in her heart. And his mother kept all these things in her heart. St. Luke makes special mention of this twice, once at the birth of Jesus and again at the very end of his childhood. On this day of Our Lady of Sorrows, this is something for us to consider, that Mary's sorrow is one of the fruits of her reflective, meditative nature. I hope that this time together can provide you not so much with facts or even catechesis, but with opportunities for further reflection and meditation on your own lives, especially if you are a mother or a father. So what I'd like for us to meditate on is the ways in which Mary's life in the Holy Family embodied so many of the sorrows that moms and dads experience in contemporary family life. Mary knows if you are a mother or a father, or if you're planning on being a mother or a father, Mary knows your life firsthand. From the beginning, before a child is even born, mothers often face a significant challenge: trying to get the father of their own child to be connected. I spent, one of the things that I did as a seminarian was 1 year of ministry at a crisis pregnancy center. And one of the challenges that those moms face were trying to get the fathers of their babies, their unborn babies, to actually be connected, to care about that child, to want to be a part of that child's life. But even in non-crisis situations, I think maybe some of the mothers in here can attest that sometimes it's hard for the father to feel as connected to the child as the mother does. You carried this little one in your womb for 9 months. The father doesn't even meet the child until after you have formed this incredible bond. What the scriptures tell us is that Mary knows this part of motherhood very strongly. Saint Joseph, when he found out that Mary was with child, went through a discernment and decided to divorce her quietly. Scholars debate as to why that was exactly. Was there, his sense of he didn't know who the father of the child was, or did he know that she was with child by the Holy Spirit and felt so unworthy that he just couldn't see himself as fathering Jesus? Whatever the reason, he didn't feel a desire, didn't feel called even to be connected to this child. And it was only after an angelic intervention, a divine intervention, that Joseph took Mary and the child into his home. What many women experience in the 21st century, Mary way back then in Nazareth knew in her life. Many families, especially early in their marriage, experience poverty. The Nativity story reminds us that Mary and Joseph knew this. There is a sorrow, I think, that many mothers experience of knowing their children's true worth and true gifts, even as they see that child enter into a not-so-friendly world that won't recognize their child in the same way. Again, mothers and fathers have spent all this time with their children, seeing how funny they are, seeing how great they are, seeing just what amazing little human beings they are. And then they send them into a world that sometimes just doesn't care, doesn't recognize, doesn't see what a special gift from God this little one is. This is something that Mary experienced at the presentation, which was sort of the genesis of today's feast. Simeon proclaims to her that Jesus is the salvation which God has prepared in the sight of every people, a light for revelation to the Gentiles and glory of God's people Israel. What a beautiful confirmation that must have been to Mary. Yes, this stranger recognizes how precious, how special, how amazing my child is. But then in the next moment, Simeon prophesies, This child is to be destined for the fall and rise of many in Israel, and to be a sign that will be contradicted. What heartbreak this must have been for Mary to hear that her son will be misunderstood, that he'll be rejected and hurt rather than recognized for who he truly is. There's a sorrow that many families experience that comes with moving and starting over. Certainly the Holy Family's plight was more than just a simple move. They were refugees fleeing political violence. And that's an important reality for us to keep in mind today. All those families that are refugees, fleeing violence in our world, sometimes religious persecution. On a more common, ordinary level, the Holy Family knew something that almost all of us know. The challenge of being a new family in a town, of not knowing anybody, of having to start over. Now, it's good for us to know that Mary and Joseph and Jesus, when they went to Egypt, there was a Jewish community there. I mean, they weren't, just going into a, Old Testament Pharaoh land or something like that, right? But there was still the need to start over. And we can see in Jesus's life, there are little hints that we have throughout, that time in Egypt was important for him, that it shaped him in many ways, because the Jewish community there was different than the Jewish community in the world. And that's yet another challenge that the Holy Family had to face. Going back home and restarting over all again. How many of your families have experienced something like that? There's a certain excitement and adventure in that, but there's also a kind of sorrow, a sorrow that Mary and the Holy Family knew. And a sorrow that's probably more stereotypical for all of us who are parents. The sorrow that comes with the growing independence of your preteen child. Especially if that child is ultra gifted or ultra focused. These children might see realities that you as parents don't. They just assume these realities are obvious. Why can't you see them? Why can't you understand them? It's great to think about the finding of the child Jesus in the temple, not as just some great theological moment where Jesus recognizes himself as the Son of God, but as a conflict between a preteen and their parents, all of whom are sinless, all of whom have goodwill, yet they're butting heads. Why didn't you know that I was going to be here in the temple? Why were you looking for me? You can just imagine a little genius child of yours, a little ultra-focused child of yours saying, didn't you know this or that about my life was just going to be obvious? And you'd have to sort of corral that child, help direct that child. And we get little hints of that. Because the story doesn't end with just Jesus's revelation and his parents being dumbfounded. It says that they went home and Jesus was obedient to them. They had to direct this little genius, this Son of God, this ultra gifted child in their lives. That's a joy, that's an adventure. It also comes with some sorrow. It's a sorrow that Mary and Joseph knew. I want to pause here and notice something interesting. Two of these moments, that presentation in the temple and the finding of the child in the temple, are canonically recognized in our tradition both as two of Mary's 7 sorrows and as 2 of the 5 joyful mysteries of the Rosary. I'm pointing this out not so much just to recognize something strange, but to recognize the truth. A truth that you who are parents know. The truth that sorrow and joy are not incompatible. And that particularly in the lives of parents, the same powerful moment or event can be an occasion for both of these responses. Think about any great moment. Where's Father Bobby that he talked about in his homily? Even the very birth and bringing home of the child. Joy and sorrow. When your child went to school for the first time. Joy and sorrow. When your child got married. joy and sorrow. Up to now, we've focused our meditation on the childhood of Jesus and the sorrows that parents experience at that stage of life. But Our Lady of Sorrows, of course, has much to show the parents of adult children in our world. First, the sorrow of just fully releasing your adult child into the world, especially when you know your child has a vocation to do something good, but very hard. Think about the exchange between Jesus and Mary at the wedding feast at Cana. When Jesus tells her, "My hour has not yet come," that's more than just saying, "I don't want to do this." Jesus knows what his hour means. Mary probably knows what Jesus' hour means. Releasing Jesus into his public life, he knows and she knows, is going ultimately to lead to the cross. At that moment, Jesus is basically, in some sense, saying, do we really want to begin this? Do we really want to begin this now? And what does Mary do? She turns to those servants and says, do whatever he tells you. If he's ready, he'll be ready. He's ready for his hour to come. She doesn't force him into it, but she gives him that nudge and says, I'm ready. Talk to these servants. Let your life begin. I think about parents who have watched their children enter religious life or priesthood, or parents who have watched their children join the armed forces, be deployed. There is a joy and a pride in all of that. There is also a deep sorrow in that. Mary knows that. The sorrow of seeing your adult child lonely or abandoned by those close to them. This is the beginning of the Passion, when all of Jesus' disciples melt away except one, and his mother is sort of left there to fill their role. Many of us, see the crisis of loneliness among young adults firsthand. Some of us have experienced the agony of seeing your adult child go through something like a divorce, where the person most close to him or her has abandoned them. There is pain and there is beauty as a parent, as a mother, standing by your adult child when they have no one else. You don't necessarily anticipate that this is going to be the role you'll fill for your 30 or 40 or 50-year-old. Sometimes life circumstances thrust that upon you as the parent. And when you fill that role, again, there is a renewed friendship, there is a renewed bond, but there is great sorrow. The sorrow of standing by a child who endures some scandal or shame. Jesus was completely innocent. We know that. Mary knew that. But that didn't make what her son was experiencing and enduring any less publicly humiliating. Mary stood by him in that. As parents who have gone through something like that, it doesn't really matter whether your child is innocent or guilty. It doesn't really matter whether they deserve the humiliation that they're enduring. They're still your precious child. You know, again, their worth. You know the love that you have shared. And there is, again, a kind of beauty, but definitely a greater sorrow there in standing by your child in that kind of moment of significant need. And then, of course, there is the sorrow of losing a child. Mary knows this. I won't speak about this in any more depth because you who are parents, you who are close with other parents, you know this sorrow more than I could. But Mary knows this firsthand. Our Lady of Sorrows is the patroness of the Congregation of Holy Cross. She's my patroness. And our main virtue in Holy Cross is hope. In Latin, spes. Our motto is Ave Crux Spes Unica. Hail the cross, our only hope. As Christians, we have hope ultimately because we know the sorrow of the cross is the means of our salvation, the best proof we have of God's love. And also because we know that the cross leads to the resurrection. Yet in our own sorrows, we may not know how the resurrections of our own lives will unfold in this lifetime and in eternity. And during this in-between time, Jesus Christ has given us a great instrument of hope by giving us his sorrowful mother to be our mother. Jesus' words from the cross speak directly to each one of us Christians. Woman, behold your son. Son, behold your mother. Mary is your mother. She's my mother. For those of you who are parents, don't just let her be your role model. Let her be your mother, even as she is also the mother of your children. It can sound a strange thing, because is then Mary the grandmother of my children, or is she the mother of my children? Give a quick image here from my own personal life. My mom had my sister, older sister, very young. She had her when she was early in her, she had her in her senior year of college. So in the sort of middle of her senior year of college, my mom had my older sister. My dad was away in the service at that time. So my mom was married to my dad, but this, in some sense, single mom, also a student. So a mom and finishing up her senior year. She was also a math major, very tough major. And as she would go to class, she would leave her baby, my older sister, home with her own mother. My grandma was kind of both mother to my mom and mother to my older sister and grandmother to my older sister, all kind of simultaneously. And that created a bond between my older sister and my grandma that I never had, could never understand. That bond between my sister and her grandma / second mom lasted throughout her entire life, even though that period of time only lasted about 6 months. This is the image that I want us to kind of think about in terms of Mary and our children. She's at the same time your mother, at the same time the mother of your children. Let her mother your children. Let her share some of that maternal burden. One of the greatest gifts you could give your children, even if they're adults, even if you don't feel like you've done it yet, is to really inspire in them an idea that they are children not just of God, but children of Mary. To let go a bit of your own maternal responsibility and turn that over to Our Lady is, again, one of the greatest gifts that you could give to your family. And this is why, again, for us, Mary is such an instrument of hope. She is the one who already has experienced the fullness of resurrection, not just in witnessing the resurrection of her son, but in being the only other person who has participated fully in that resurrection through her own assumption. This is your mother. She is your hope as you walk through this valley of tears.